Welcome to the Oddity Atlas channel. Although Qatar has a very strong air defense system, arguably one of the strongest in the region, it was unable to intercept the missiles that were launched, which remain unnamed. And more than that, a puzzling question remains: how did this happen? The attack itself is a mystery that raises dozens of questions. Why did the Zionists carry out this strike? Did the strike achieve its goals or not? How did the resistance leaders miraculously survive? And why didn't the United States warn Qatar about the strike? Will this strike affect the future of Arab countries' relations with the Americans? Many questions deserve discussion. But before we begin, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you receive our videos as soon as they come out. The first question we need to answer: why did the Zionists carry out this strike in the first place? And why do they threaten the sovereignty of a state like Qatar, especially given that Qatar is a NATO partner, a US ally, and has a long record in international mediation and conflict resolution? If we look at the Israeli narrative, we find that the party that spoke after the strike immediately played the role of moral ambassador and spokesperson for good intentions, describing the political leaders of the resistance who were in Qatar as terrorists who should be handed over to justice, and saying that Qatar is hosting terrorists on its soil. And on that basis, we carried out the strike. Apart from the fact that the one who uttered those words, Netanyahu, is accused of war crimes and faces criminal cases, and is the last person on the planet to lecture others about ethics and virtue, many people do not know that Qatar's hosting of the Resistance's political leadership office on its soil originally came at the request and in coordination with the United States and those who are not to be named. Over the years, there were many occasions when Israel needed to communicate with the resistance, and so the US and Israel directly asked Qatar to open a line of dialogue with the resistance and to act as a mediator, alongside the role Egypt plays. Indeed, in 2000 and 2012, which is the years 2000 and 2012, Qatar established an office to host the resistance's political leaders at the request and coordination of the Americans and those who were not to be named. That is, they were the ones who asked Qatar to do this so they would have a way to communicate with the resistance. And it is well known that the resistance's office in Qatar and its location are known. Many diplomatic delegations come to it and meet them at that headquarters. So the place is not some military secret as some people suppose. The office is located in Doha's very upscale district and is surrounded by several embassies, such as the embassies of the Philippines, Kenya, and the Dominican Republic, and it is also adjacent to government institutions, universities, schools, and so on. For this reason, the attack was strange and shocking. No one expected that those who are not to be named would target the political office located in the middle of residential units in the heart of the Qatari capital. In addition, the leaders who were present were political leaders, not military ones. And you yourselves said, "Make an office so we can talk to them." Therefore, this strike was treacherous and a betrayal of the unnamed ones. Of course, their nature is known. They don't keep covenants. The second question we also need to answer: why did the unnamed ones carry out the attack at this particular moment? The short answer: Israel wanted to sabotage the ceasefire agreement that had been on the negotiation table recently. The US administration presented a proposal to the resistance that called for an agreement in which all the hostages held by the resistance, roughly about 50 people, would be released, and in return, Palestinian prisoners held in occupation jails would be freed, in addition to the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza by sea. The proposal included a 60-day truce and ceasefire, during which the main issues would be discussed, such as the withdrawal of Israeli forces, the disarmament of the resistance, the formation of an independent authority to govern the Gaza Strip, and other major issues. The political leaders were gathered in Qatar, and last Tuesday they were at their headquarters discussing this plan specifically. Israel struck them to prevent the negotiation process from taking place and at the same time to eliminate senior political leaders, so the resistance would have no negotiating head, allowing Israel afterwards to claim it has no real negotiating partner, which would be a pretext to continue military operations in Gaza and the West Bank and to control them as it seeks, without the need for a political or diplomatic solution based on negotiation, especially since Netanyahu sees Trump as a strong supportive ally, and with a pretext for war and almost unlimited U.S. cover, this might be his last opportunity to achieve his despicable aims, so he acts recklessly, hoping to gain as much as possible. If we get into details of the attack itself, the story began on Tuesday, September 9th at 2 p.m. from the Nevatim Air Base in Israel, which is more than 2,250 kilometers from Doha. About 15 F-35 aircraft took off, stealth fighters designed to evade radars, along with fuel tanks that allow them to fly roughly 2,200 kilometers. These jets departed accompanied by a group of F-15 fighters to secure their route, in addition to a tanker aircraft to refuel them during the flight that lasted from an hour and a half to 2 full hours. So far, the exact route the aircraft followed has not been officially announced. Whether they crossed the airspace of several Arab countries, there is talk they flew via the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf. But what is certain is that they did not enter Qatar's airspace, rather they stopped short of Qatar's borders by a small distance. At precisely 3:45 p.m. Doha time, they fired about 10 precision missiles toward the building. The missiles fired were air-to-ground missiles, not launched from land platforms as some people think. They were launched directly by the stealth aircraft themselves. They targeted the ground floor because their intelligence relied on tracking some leaders' phones, which indicated they were on the ground floor, therefore that floor was targeted specifically. After the strike, the Israeli aircraft withdrew and returned to Nevatim Air Base. Before they could celebrate and declare the operation a success, the unexpected happened. The resistance leaders had left their phones on the ground floor with their aides and had moved up to another floor to attend the meeting. And some Israeli media reports say the leaders survived because they left their phones and went off to perform the Asar prayer. The strike occurred while they were praying, as reported by an Israeli newspaper, National News. Thus, although the operation technically caused some casualties, it failed miserably to reach the top leaders who were the primary targets, despite the extensive preparations and equipment used. The operation, planned for months, resulted in the deaths of a small number of members of the movement, plus a 22-year-old Qatari citizen who was part of the security detail guarding the complex, and several civilians were injured. It caused terror among residents in the area, especially since we are talking about a residential neighborhood with schools, kindergartens, and universities. The very important question after that is, why didn't Qatar's air defense systems intercept the attack? Qatar possesses Patriot missile batteries and the S-300 anti-ballistic missile system, and also has Chinese S-400 systems, and it hosts the largest U.S. military facility outside the United States, Al Adid Air Base, where about 11,000 American troops are stationed. The base is about 30 kilometers from the site of the strike. So how did those missiles pass over the building easily without interception? The official U.S. narrative was that the systems are not capable of intercepting the precise missiles used in the attack, because those systems are designed to intercept heavy ballistic missiles. This is relatively true, especially since Israel used hypersonic precision missiles that have a low radar signature and high speed, allowing them to reach the target before air defense systems can react. Thus, the US came out saying it was surprised and hadn't known in advance. But the truth isn't that simple. Yes, systems like the S-300 or S-400 might have difficulty disabling precise missiles in the case of a sudden attack. But what happened? The F-35s were airborne for about 2 hours along their route before reaching Qatar, and they were accompanied by F-15s and a refueling tanker, all of which are easy for radar systems to detect. Even if the F-35s are hard to spot, the F-15s and the tanker are routinely visible from the moment they take off. And many estimates say that US and European radar systems in the Gulf region can detect air movements at long ranges, which means they were certainly aware of the Israeli aircraft's movements. That is the case unless the operation was coordinated with them. Regarding aerial interception, the US base in Qatar detected the Israeli aircraft and observed the attack from the beginning, yet it did not inform in time or did not take effective interception measures. It could have confronted the Israeli jets with American fighters, but it did not. Why? Because intercepting an Israeli aircraft could impose a huge political and military cost on the United States. Were they prepared for that? No. Israel is, for the United States, a pampered ally due to deep ties between money and politics. America tolerates Israel on many matters, even at the expense of other allies, and it may later offer an apology and justify it by saying this happened without our knowledge, or claim Netanyahu acted individually and not the state, a narrative we know well. In the end, the strike that targeted Qatar constitutes a regional warning that requires a practical response. It is necessary not to rely entirely on external guarantees, but to strengthen mechanisms of regional cooperation and diplomacy and coordinate security, political, and humanitarian policies to protect civilians and preserve stability. Sustainable solutions are built on commitment to international law, multilateral dialogue, and building joint institutional capacities to manage crises and prevent escalation. The message here is a call for practical unity and realistic cooperation, away from inflammatory rhetoric, and joint work for the security and stability of the region. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications so you receive all updates. Thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you next time.